everyone, and welcome to the SoCal Summer Swing Out podcast. The music you are currently listening to is called Dances in the Night by Papa D, a fellow swing dancer, musician, artist, and friend. You can find all links for streaming, socials, and videos down below. Make sure to go and support him. Now let's get into the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the SoCal Summer Swing Out podcast. My name is Andre, your host, and I am welcomed by a very handsome man today, a very wonderful human. Everybody, please say hello to Mishu. Mishu, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on this podcast. Sorry, a little nervous.
Oh, you're good, bro. You're good. It's just us. It's just us. No one else is here but me and you. I want to thank you for doing this because we've been trying to put this together for a minute, right?
Yeah, for a while, but we've both been quite busy, so
I
yeah,
mean,
finally got
it's
a breather.
happening. I know it's happening now, and I'm sure all the Florida people, all the Irvine people, they're all really excited to see what you have to offer. But that being said, there are some people who don't know who you are. So, for starters, why don't we go ahead and have you give us an intro of who Mishu is and essentially a snippet of your dance journey?
Um, who am I? It's a great question. Uh, so my full name is Amanatullah Khan, and Mishu is just a nickname that my parents gave me. In our culture, if you have a kind of like a religious name or a religious name that's a title, then
Mm-hmm.
you're given a nickname. So Amanatullah is like it's Arabic for gift of God. So then I get something like Mishu as my nickname, and they don't have to have anything in common. So and Mishu means
Mm-hmm.
baby deer. So
That's
so
amazing. I love
yeah.
it.
Yeah, I hated it at first, but you grow to love it. It's great.
Yeah.
So I was born and raised in South Florida in Boca Raton. So
Mm-hmm.
if you've seen like Seinfeld, they talk about Boca Raton quite a bit because that's where it's quite known for a lot of like Jewish family like grandparents kind of retiring.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people meme about it, but it's a beautiful place. I like it a lot. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and let's see, I am Bengali, 100%, which is a small country that's right beside India, right underneath the Himalayas. And let's see, my dance journey started in college, where I did my undergrad, is in Gainesville, Florida,
Mm-hmm.
small college town. And the college scene is one of those where, has constant rotation. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody's relatively like learning and still new to it and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's see, I started in that was 2013 summer.
Mm.
And that was I remember going because there was this girl I was actually really interested in. Um and and honestly, like she was a mutual friend of one of my really good friends. So we'd go together, and I just wanted to keep seeing her, so I kept going. But eventually, she she stopped going to the club,
Mm.
and I started just getting hooked on kind of like dancing and what it was about.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point, I got kind of like tapped into leadership, um, by a good friend of mine. Now her name is Alex DeVoe. She is a pretty well-known dancer out in the East. I think she's in Philly. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, and yeah, and through that group of leadership, I made like a lot of my lifelong friends. So, anyways, so that was like three-ish years, and then when I finally finished my undergrad and got into grad school in Irvine, I moved over and in Irvine, California. I moved over and didn't actually think too much about the local dancing. I was just
Mm.
like, oh, I wonder if there's anything nearby. And then and I was like, oh, atomic ballroom? What? And it was only like leading up, that was like 2016. I was leading up to that point. I didn't actually know too much about it until I think I found out about specifically that ballroom through just like following some well-known dancers at Lindy Focus. And I find out that their local teachers in Irvine. That blew
Mm,
my freaking mind because like I didn't. Atomic Bar was like down the street. Effectively, it's down the street from UC Irvine, so I was super super hyped. So really happy about that. Yeah.
dude. And then and then that's when you joined UCI Swing Dance Club, right?
Yeah. So I showed up like the first day, the first meeting that they had,
Mm-hmm.
and then grad school hit me like a truck, so I just
Mm.
disappeared. So I showed up that one day, um, and that was also the day that I met my fiance. um,
Ooh.
and who, for those of you who don't know, it's Amy Lynn Cabrera, which
Mm-hmm.
is the goddess that dances alongside Andre. So, um, uh, yeah, and then let's see. Yeah, so I like joined the club and then like danced like once and then got really busy and then later that academic year I found like I figured out my work like work play balance and then ended up joining the club more consistently and being part of leadership as well, actually
Mm-hmm.
alongside Amy and a couple others. So that was pretty cool. Um, and then finally I finished. So that was there. I was there for 6 years, and then uh, finished grad school and had a lot of growth in dancing, and then finally got a job over here in Phoenix, Arizona, and
Mm.
then moved over, and so now I'm here. Yeah. So
And
uh,
now you are temporarily in Phoenix, Arizona before you come home, is what you're saying. Like
yeah. Seems like
the
the
yeah,
yeah.
but you're home. You're home and Phoenix is great and I love the Phoenix people. We also
Yeah.
miss you at home, you know?
Yeah, I miss you guys a ton as well. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the start. You learned how to dance in UC at UC at in Florida, and then you
Yeah, at
continued
University of
dancing.
Florida. Yeah,
Yeah,
I forgot to mention
University
that.
of
Yeah.
Florida, and
Yeah.
then you came to UCI for grad school. Now, I don't think a lot of people know this, but you are a doctor, aren't you?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah. Yeah.
Doctor
That's
of what?
so I studied physics and specifically I studied quantum magnetism or nanomagnetism. But I mean, the words are fancy, but it's the physics of really, really, really small magnets, and there's a lot of really rich and interesting things that happen on that scale. And I thought it was super fascinating. So,
Dude,
but yeah, so
if you guys are listening to this, like Mishu talking about physics is, I can tell why Amy likes you, bro. Like you're so cute when you're talking about that shit.
yeah, this shit gets me going, bro. If you ever, if you're ever at a dance event and you find, if Josiah and myself are in the same event, if you
Mhm.
bring us together, we're just gonna start popping off on physics. We're just gonna be going all in. So
Hell
if
yeah.
you want to hear that, yeah. So he's in a similar, he's in a very, very close. I mean, he's in the same specialization as myself. He's right now at UC Riverside working on his PhD.
Hmm.
And his advisor is actually a very close collaborator to my former advisor. So
Dude,
yeah,
that's dope. You know what's cool about the swing dance scene is I feel like there's so many people who are so intellectual and so smart, because we have
mm.
engineers, we have physicists, we have data scientists, we have teachers, and it's so cool that we can connect on not just dance, but like on all those other things too, right?
Yeah, I love it. It's like a really cool like level of intersection that I really like about the community because you just see because I otherwise like I wouldn't even know how to meet other people from other from other disciplines or even like yeah
I mean, I feel you there because I've heard from a lot of people. I've heard from a lot of people that dancing was a way for because they're people who come to dance, they tend to like sometimes they've never danced before, but I've seen a commonality that people who aren't as socially adept, they find dancing really helpful because they have to interact with someone and it's a way for them to build up their social skills, right?
Yeah, I think, yeah, personally, I went through that. Like, I think I wasn't very. I mean, like, I knew how to be like amiable, but I I didn't really know how to. I mean, maybe I still don't, but but like I feel like I've improved quite a bit once you just through that mere exposure, and you end up getting all of the little nuggets of wisdom and kind of like, oh, like, like this is kind of awkward, this is cool, this is chill, like these vibes are something that I like to embody, these vibes I don't like to embody, stuff like that. It's yeah, it really does help in learning how to interact with other humans. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, a
I
hundred
totally
percent.
agree.
Now, speaking of other humans, I did put out a poll and I did have some people ask some questions. So I put this poll up on Instagram and I essentially asked people to send in their questions, you know? And so I am going to go ahead and pick a couple and see if you can answer them. I'll try and make it chronological, okay?
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
some of these I might have to bleep out, so I'm going to get the obvious one out of the way. So we have a certain man who likes frogs
Mm,
asking, "Do you eat
froggy.
chicken?" That's a legit question. I'm bleeping that out
I
100%. I'm
totally I
totally bleeping
totally
that out.
knew I knew those. Were you gonna bleep? What, you gonna put chicken instead? We bleep it
I'm just
out or
gonna
put chicken.
I'm just gonna yeah, sure. I'll put chicken. I'll do that. But so that was a question. Do you eat
Hmm.
chicken, Mishu?
Oh, I love chicken. Chicken's
Hell
dope.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's
Hell
gotta be prepped the right way. It can't be. There's a whole process to it.
oh hell
Chicken's
yeah.
great.
I've made chicken for you before, haven't I?
I think so. Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah, I
I've
did.
been to your parties and that shit was super lit.
I
The
know.
stuff when you
Okay,
cook
yeah.
that. Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
good. Someday I'll talk about some of our parties that we've had. So here we have
Yeah.
another question from someone from Denver. His name's Clay. Clay asks, "How do you like your eggs?"
You know what's funny is my DJ and humor lean towards this one. You know that song? The
Sing
song
it.
is like,
Say it.
how you like your eggs, fried and
Try to
fertilized, fried and
fertilize.
fertilized.
I'm pretty sure that's where he was trying to get us to go.
Yeah,
It's
so
freaking amazing.
that'll be that's my answer, fried and fertilized.
Hell to the yeah. Okay. And then we have a longtime listener. Her name is Sandy. You know Sandy.
I love
She
Sandy.
she's amazing. She comments and listens to every
She's
episode.
wonderful.
Sandy, big shout out to you.
Oh yeah.
She asks, what is your favorite city? Do you like Orange County, California, or Phoenix more? Ooh, Phoenix is gonna listen to this, bro.
Honestly, I think I would have to give it to I think I would have to give it to Irvine, yeah. Just
Yeah?
because I just think that the local culture really vibes with the things that I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like I do like that Irvine in particular has a very strong Asian community, or
Mm,
like very it's a very strong influence of the Asian community, and so you could so one, there's just a ton of great international foods everywhere, um,
mm-hmm.
and restaurants and whatnot, um, and then also because of like the culture of UC Irvine, like I feel like there's a lot of like other things like esports, which is a big thing that I really like. Uh, and it's like tons of things going on in LA, and proximity to LA is just always really nice because there's just
Mm-hmm.
so much to do, but you don't have to deal with living inside of LA. so,
Yeah.
there's that, and then also just I guess the community that I've built for myself, or like just the friends that I've made there are, they really mean a lot to me. And so like being there for 6 years, you develop a lot. And it wasn't just in physics, or sorry, just in dancing. Actually, dancing was a huge part of it, but it was
Hmm.
also in the physics community slash like kind of the academic community that I was part of. And yeah, so
Yeah, not to mention the girl you like lives in that area.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's a big
yeah.
reason. Phoenix can't fault you for that either, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
Speaking of Phoenix, and because it's October, Patrick Coe asks, have you ever seen a ghost?
A ghost. Hmm. So I can't recall a specific instance, but I can recall. So I can't recall like the actual memory,
Yeah.
but I can recall feelings of seeing one. I don't know if that makes
Mm,
sense.
mm,
Long, long time ago. Like I have. It's weird because like you can have memories of like just like the feeling itself. So I'd
hmm.
like to think like that I have, but I can't remember when. And I think it was it was definitely when I was in Florida. 'Cause Florida is kind of a spooky
Yeah.
place, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, um, and yeah, so um, and also just like being raised in an Islamic environment, there's those always things about just like afterlife and spirits and stuff like that. It's so that's probably a
No,
large influence of that. But yeah.
no. That makes sense. I'll tell you right now, like, I don't fuck with ghosts. I don't fuck with any of that because yeah, all of that to me is like I don't mess with that stuff. So kudos to you for being okay with that ghost just sitting on your shoulder, you know?
Yeah,
Ah,
yeah. I guess it just depends on kind of like what idea of ghosts you subscribe to. Because
mm-hmm.
like just like thinking about it logically, it's like, we have what, over 7 billion people in population, and statistically, you know, the ghosts that would stick around are probably chilling, if that makes sense. Right. Like
Yeah. No,
right,
you're
like
yeah.
so I'm not, I wouldn't be, yeah, it makes sense. I wouldn't like fuck with ghosts, but I feel like they're not out to like they're not as they can't, if we shit on ghosts with all this like negative, like perspective and ghost stories and spooky things and ghost killers, it's like, they can't do anything in response. It's like because they're dead.
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
So
There's
yeah.
that logical brain. Okay.
Yeah. I mean they could all just be good, chilling.
I feel you. Yeah, they could be like chilling. They don't have to be horror, terrible
Aggressive.
nightmares.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I have a couple more questions. So we have two questions that ask about your work. So one of them is tell us about your research, and then the other one is what is the greatest victory as a doctor? I'm going to challenge you, Dr. Khan, to summarize that in 3 or 4 sentences. So tell us about your research and greatest victory as a doctor. And that's coming from Jet and Bianca, by the way.
Okay. Yeah, that's a tough one, especially with those constraints. So my research uh for my PhD, it was um it was studying this specific property of what of dynamics of nanomagnets. So and that specific property was called non-reciprocity. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have a physical system that looks symmetric, like geometrically it is symmetric, the material itself could actually have something that's intrinsically asymmetric. So if I take a magnetic material, I can apply wiggles on one side. Those wiggles will propagate like waves, like waves on water.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if the system itself looks geometrically symmetric, and you apply wiggles going in one direction, and then you apply the same exact wiggles to go in the opposite direction, you can actually get completely different behavior. And this is this is actually something that's like kind of understood, but like not well understood. And so I was studying this non-reciprocal behavior in spin wave propagation, which is the waves of magnetic media. So you can have, even though, so if for those of you who don't know too much about magnets, they are just composed of bunch of tiny atomic magnets, and they all kind
Mm-hmm.
of point together, kind of like a compass in a Earth's magnetic field. They all kind of point together. But if you actually introduce some kind of dynamics, like you wiggle them, then you can actually get some really interesting physics that come out from them interacting from each other. So I studied non-reciprocity, um, and um, and big applications of that are like a lot of like 5G communications or wireless
Mm-hmm.
communications, anything that involves like radio frequency or yeah, anything like wireless effectively. Um, and then the biggest, I mean, honestly, I would say that the biggest triumph, there was two moments. One is making my first device. That
Mm-hmm.
was actually, so I had to learn how to make nano devices by
Mm-hmm.
hand, and I wouldn't say it's a very long and arduous process.
Mm-hmm.
And I have mad respect for surgeons because holy shit, when you have to deal with those things that are so sensitive and so small with tools that require a lot of like tactile precision, it
Mm-hmm.
it, it could be tilting quite quickly. um,
Mm-hmm.
so that was the first. So first is making my first device and then like setting it up and getting it to actually work, which is
Mm-hmm.
that was huge. And then definitely the second, and I don't know which one's more, is actually like getting that handshake from my PI, my principal investigator, my advisor, when I did my
Mm-hmm.
defense, and he's like, "Congratulations, doctor!" Like that was huge. Like that,
Hell yeah.
yeah, that felt really good. And then there's others too, like I guess when like the first publication I was part of actually got published, I thought that was kind of cool. So that,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know if those 3 or 4 sentences, but
Sure. That was the 3 or 4 sentences. Yeah. We'll call it that.
they're very long
Um,
sentences. Yeah.
yeah, there are good sentences though. I dig them. Okay. So we talked about you as a person, we talked about your work. And I definitely want to touch more on the dance piece because you and I vibe a lot in the sense of community. So a couple people asked some questions here that I would want to bring up to you. So the first dance question is just like a number question. Uh, Bianca, the wonderful Bianca, would like to know how much shag do you do?
I've been doing a bit more recently, and I'm
Yeah?
so hype about it. Yeah. So having, a shag queen in the same city, Julie Roman,
Mm,
it's
mm,
just like she's a wonderful, wonderful like resource, and she's an absolutely amazing human. Um, and one thing actually is like I when I was in California, I was surrounded by so many like amazing bow dancers, and like
mm,
I was like learning bow and picking it up and absorbing it, but I feel like I didn't really take as much advantage of like having that such easy access to all those amazing bow dancers.
mm,
Um, when I was there. And it wasn't until after I moved, I was like, oh man, I really kind of fumbled that opportunity. So now I now that I have access to awesome shag dancers here, and I mean also awesome ball dancers here too, um,
mm.
I I was now I'm like putting more effort into learning it. And now that I don't have to deal with like grad school studies and I can just work and then dance,
Yeah.
it's really chill. So yeah, so I've been doing a bit more. Bianca, and I'm super hyped. It's really hard. It's really, really hard. It's I'm fighting so much just to like,
Mm,
not do like kick steps all over the place and just fighting a lot
mm.
of that second nature of like doing, Charleston or, Lindy Hop style footwork. Like that throws me off the shag groove.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, been doing more recently, and it's really, really fun. I just took a small like mini workshop with with I forgot his
Patricio.
last name. No, with Zach.
Oh,
Zach. Is it Lockett?
I
Don't recall his last name. I
I
think
don't either. But I
Zach
know who you're
Lockett.
talking about. You're talking about the Shag
Yeah,
guy who like
yeah,
is the Shag, right?
yeah. Zach Lockett Strife, I think is how you pronounce it. And Julie. Um, so that was really fun. It was really fun. It was really hard. I got definitely like thrown into the deep end. And she
Mm,
was like, "You should do it." And I'm like, "Bro, I can't. I barely could do the basic, and that's all my like brain. That's all my dance capacity." And she's like, "Just just come out and try and see how you do." And I had a lot of fun. So, yeah, yeah.
nice. Gotcha. Well, I have to say that I do envy the fact that you are surrounded by people like Julie, Jackie, you know, and like
Mm-hmm.
Matthew, Cassie,
Mm-hmm.
just amazing, amazing, and Sean and everyone. Like you're surrounded by amazing people, and I that is one of the things I appreciate about the Phoenix scene is how like you guys just have wonderful people there, which actually brings me to the next question. Another wonderful person who lives in Phoenix, Morningstar, right?
Yeah,
They asked a question of they said have him talk about his philosophy on building community and fast feet in Phoenix because that's tomorrow, right? Or is that tonight?
yeah. It's tomorrow. It's tomorrow. Yeah. So philosophy and community. So it's um I think to sum it all into one word, I think is cozy.
Mm, mm,
I think cozy is like the key word that I've been really kind of just coming back to when I've been thinking about like, what do I want this thing to be? How do I want people to feel?
mm-hmm,
And I think, yeah, cozy. I want it to be cozy. So it's this, there isn't any kind of, I want it so that like people come and hang out. They don't worry about everything outside. And the
mm,
thing is, though, even in dance, sometimes in dance, you could feel a lot of stress and anxiety and, you know, self doubt and a lot of those kind of really difficult feelings. And I wanted a dance space where even those things in dance are not actually present, like
mm-hmm,
that,
mm-hmm,
like you really are there to share your love of dancing and hang out and meet other people who also share that same love and share, just nerd out about dancing together. So
mm-hmm,
that's, yeah. And I think that when the space is cozy, you feel like you could do that.
mm.
It opens that space for you to nerd out about dancing, like yeah, yeah.
That that adjective cozy, that like that's really cool. It warms my heart that someone has that desire to make people feel that welcome. You feel me?
Yeah. I picked up that word actually from uh Kimberly Mears.
Oh, nice.
Um yeah, I remember a long time ago when I like first met her. She was like, "Oh, I really like your dancing. It feels really cozy." And I didn't actually know what that meant at that time,
Mm-hmm,
but I like love that description. And that's like
mm-hmm,
something that I like am striving for in my own dancing now is to make it cozy because I think when it feels cozy I think it really opens up a lot of and people get to like relax and then they're not worried, there's no stress or strain or any of that.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
And like when you say leave everything else outside and just come in to nerd about dancing, I feel like that's such a needed thing. Because so my podcast recently got released and that's what I talked about, like being homeless, right? And how
Mm-hmm.
you knew the entire situation. Um, but like I needed to dance. I paid like the $15 when I only had 20 because I needed to just escape my
Yeah,
situation for 3 hours and just feel like a sense of dopamine that could get me through the next couple of days or the week. So I feel like you
yeah.
creating that cozy environment is going to be so helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah. I've already gotten, I mean, I've only done it so tomorrow's going to be the second time ever. And the
Oh,
first
nice.
time I think it was really well received and I'm really happy about it. And I think people were like, yeah, it's like kind of what they wanted for a little bit of time. I think COVID like kind of killed a lot of what was going on around the scene for a bit. So
Hmm.
this is a nice kind of space now that's opening up for people. And I think another aspect of that is that I'm quite growth oriented. Like
Mm.
it's just something that I really enjoy. Like I played a lot of RPG games and just video games in general that have some kind of leveling system, and I just really enjoyed the process of just leveling up. um, so that was the other kind of like philosophy in that. The other aspect is I also wanted a space where people feel comfortable working on things and not
Yeah,
feeling like they have to perform.
yeah,
That's another thing. So that coziness kind of taps into that feeling as well. It's just like, oh, let's fuck around. Let's try some interesting ideas. Let's do something fun. Let's get a little silly. And yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So
Well, that's funny that you bring that up because the last question that Bianca wrote, which by the way, Bianca, thank you for writing three questions. And any
yay.
listeners, yeah, yeah, that's fucking dope. Any listeners, if you want to, I'm probably gonna do this again in the future, so you can put as many questions as you want, right? Because it makes it nice and easy. But the question that Bianca asked, which I think is perfect, after what you just said, is what is your number one dance value? Your number one dance value.
My number one dance value. Honestly, I think it would be the same word. I think it's like cozy. I think right
Mm,
now, I think, well, it rotates. I think right now I'm in this cozy headspace. I
mm-hmm,
don't, so like so the thing is that it's weird because I think if you unpack cozy, it leads into a lot of other values. So like for me, at least, like,
mm-hmm,
I've been trying to be, one thing I've been working on quite a bit for the past year is being more present
mm,
and that's really hard. Being more present in dancing so that you can actually dance with your partner and exchange ideas and have a conversation.
mm-hmm,
Um, and and in doing so, I think that you develop this feeling of like your connection feels cozy. That's kind of what I feel when and this is like kind of the tech. So I'm making the assumption your question is more about like technical dance,
mm-hmm,
but if it's more general, then I think the answer is going to be slightly different. Um, but yeah, like when a dancer connects with me, I have a my desire is that they they have this immediate understanding of like it's chill, it's fun, it's
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
you could do whatever. There's no like I don't like I mean I don't know I've been on the other end where like someone's like trying to like practice through me, like
mm,
not dance with me, or
mm,
like they are like judging, or
mm,
they're like above me, like.
mm.
And I mean that's different from like I've definitely been put, like at some point I did put myself down a lot, but then now I'm like being better about that, and now
Yeah,
I understand like the difference between like when I'm making myself feel inferior versus when someone actually is feeling superior, like. But
yeah,
yeah, it's being cozy, it's just chill out, right? It's dancing.
yeah.
I always think about what Amy said in your first podcast, which is like it's all made up.
Made up. Yeah.
It's like it organically happened because people wanted to have fun and
Mm-hmm.
mix and dance and socialize and um yeah. So I hope that answers the question, I think. Like
I
mm,
I think it
yeah,
does.
cozy. Yeah, cozy. Yeah.
I think it especially does because what you just mentioned, I can guarantee you that listeners have felt when they've danced with someone and it felt like, oh, they're just practicing something with me, or they are like rolling their eyes, or this is the one that gets me, is I'm dancing with someone and they'll be watching for their next partner, or their eyes on the prize, like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then
That's
when
not
they
a
do
fun
that,
feeling. Yeah.
it's not fun. But when they do that, I'm like, I might as well dance towards that person because I know that that's what we're looking
Yeah,
for,
yeah.
and not to fault them because maybe they're pros and they're working on that and they're giving little old me a chance, which is great because I'll eat that shit up. My goal when they do that is to dance in such a way where they have to be present with me. I'll do like
Yeah,
a little
yeah.
hip thing where they'll be like, oh, hello, okay,
That's right. You pull
that,
them back in.
yeah, be like, we're gonna be
Yeah.
cozy. We're gonna be cozy right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And I we have and you brought up the word presence again, and I really do think that if it's not if for me if it's not coziness, which I know is really high up there, I think presence is probably something that I think is next, or maybe even takes higher precedence because when you're present, you could be cozy, but when you're cozy, maybe you can't be present. Like maybe, or you know what I'm saying. Whichever one is more
yeah,
of like the like higher level in the umbrella, but um,
dude.
yeah, dance presence is really hard, especially when like I think I have some like like some spectrum of like ADHD or something. I think so, like I've
Mm-hmm.
been thinking a lot more about it and perhaps I am somewhere in there, probably not to some like serious degree, where like it requires like medication, but like it's still something that I find myself fighting quite a bit.
Mm.
So it's like that definitely comes into play in dancing a lot. Like just like making sure I don't autopilot and stuff. And that's usually when you're losing presence. Um,
Yeah, you just made me have this crazy realization. I think the reason why Amy and I hear each other and why we dance the way we do is because we have the same values as you. We prioritize being comfortable with each other, and we also prioritize being present in the dance. And I feel like what that does is just opens up our dance third eye mind type
Yeah,
shit,
yeah. There's like it just adds it unlocks this layer of connection that just transcends like the the physical, like yeah,
Yeah,
the physical
yeah.
realm. I don't know how else to describe it.
No, you're absolutely right because if there are some dancers listening to this who maybe you're towards the beginning of your dance journey, I feel like a prerequisite for being present is you get out of your head of needing to do something right. You get out of your head of needing to be like, I need to do this thing, I need to do this thing, because then you're being transactional. It will take time
Yeah.
for someone to get to a point where they're like, fuck it. I'm going to do the things that I know, and I'm going to make sure to be present for the music and with my partner. Like, do you feel what else would you add to that mixture in order to be fully present?
I think that so there's there's like this idea that you can like being present, but then you can also be like you can use being attentive to pull yourself into presence, just like you were saying
Mm,
with like like that one specific case of like this dancer is not paying attention to me. I'll do
mm,
something that pulls their attention, if that makes
mm,
sense.
mm,
And I feel like that's like you're saying from a lead perspective, but I think that could work in like in any role, which is that you can you can but like that's like garnering attention, but you as a dancer can still apply more attention so that you are more present. I don't know how else, like if that makes sense. It's like you're taking it a step further so that it can pull you into being present, because in order to be attentive, you have to be present. In order to listen, you need to be present.
mm.
So um I guess listening, I guess, might be kind of like the key word there to like layer on top of that.
Yeah.
Um it's so like and I was saying like I've been working on this for like the past year, and most of it has been coming from actually finding like actually working with a dance like a competition dance partner. So I've been working with Carol Ryberg,
Hmm.
who's a fantastic dancer on the Phoenix Bomb Squad. So if you look at previous years and including this year's performance, you'll see her just swinging the fuck out and going super hard every time. She's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Which you should check out because this every year is fantastic. This year's crazy. It is
Yeah.
crazy. Um, I'm specifically talking about the performance at Camp Hollywood. So for the Bomb Squad. So, but yeah, so working with her and having these, you do a couple social dances, you talk about it, and then we think about these different ideas, and then kind of like where are these moments where we may have disconnected and thinking about like, okay, what can we do so that we stay more connected and whatnot. And I've been learning a lot about just that for myself. Being attentive is something that requires just a little bit more effort. It's something that I need to um, like be comfortable exerting that energy to pay attention and to
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise then it's not conversational. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so and it's funny because you know how you're talking about like, yeah, you build social skills just by dancing and you learn how to interact with other humans. All of those skills are perfectly transferable to the connection in dancing too, and the partnership.
Yeah.
It's all connected. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
dude, and I do want to touch on that because I'll touch on the last question that we have. But before that, I do want to talk about that video and that performance because we were technically rivals, because
Yeah,
Phoenix had their
technically.
thing and then Airmail Special had our thing. I just want to point out, I'll leave the video link down in the description if you guys want to watch it. But I just want to point out that when you first came out, I think all of us were so in awe at your transformation. Like when you came out, I was like, is that my friend? He looks so like evil, but almost, And I think it was I think it was Jet. Jet was like, dude, seeing Mishu pretend to be evil is the funniest thing ever, honestly. uh,
Yeah, yeah.
but I'll leave that down in the description because it is an amazing video. Now, back to the topic you were talking about transferable skills, though, how social skills are transferable, being present is transferable. We also have another very dedicated, longtime listener, Emily Brenneman. So she listens to every
Yay.
podcast. She comments at the end. She ran UCI Swing Club, which I'll put UCI Swing Dance Club down below in case there are any college students
Yeah.
who want to see it as well. But she commented a really great question that I think is a good rounder to start getting us towards the end. Um, but this is one that you and I have talked about pretty in depth. This is one that Amy and I talk about a ton, and we always reference you. And I've referenced you several times throughout the podcast in reference to this. But the question that Amy has, well, not Amy, but that Emily has is any advice for a better emotional connection and awareness? Because, yeah, I know that's deep. Because Amy and I talk about like emotional intelligence and connection. The amount of times that she and I say, "Do you have bandwidth for a potential? Do you have bandwidth?" Which means like, do you have bandwidth for a potentially like difficult
Yeah, I
conversation or
love
deep
that.
conversation?
I love that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, dude. Every time we drive to San Diego or Irvine, it's always not enough time because we will get into these conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
um, so I'm gonna answer that question in a more general sense because I think
Okay.
it's just like because I think does apply everywhere. And I think the key word here is metacognition.
Oh.
So metacognition, from what I understand, and this is something that I've employed at least in the way that I understand and has worked quite well, is um, it's almost like it's like taking a step back from your own brain.
Mm,
I don't know if that makes sense. So it's
mm,
like you this is why it's metacognition. It's like you're taking a step back and you're observing exactly what's going on with your body and what with your thoughts and your
mm,
mind and your overall state of body and mind. It's you take a step back and you observe and you understand. And it's almost like being empathetic with yourself, which is it seems kind of like new agey or it sounds like some new age bullshit, like
mm,
some mysticism, but it's definitely a practice. So it's something, or it definitely garners practice. Like it's not something you could just do.
mm,
But it's this way of being able to by practicing this ability to like let me think of an example. So like suppose something happens and you find yourself quite irritated, right?
Mm,
And
mm,
if this is something that you personally um don't desire as far as like being irritated by something like this, you can take a step back and then try to understand exactly where is it coming from and how are you processing it, and then through kind of understanding how your brain ticks in regards to the stimulus effectively,
mm,
right? Because that's what humans are, is stimulus and response. It's literally, you know,
mhm,
from the day we're born, this is what we're going through. So um, you play this role of being metacognitive about how you work, and then this gives you the insight. It helps in kind of building insight and wisdom as far as like the future, as far as like how you respond to a similar stimulus, if
mhm,
that makes sense.
mhm,
And I think this may seem a little bit like removed from the original question, but I think it's quite applicable in that you build a much deeper understanding of yourself,
mm,
which then I think builds builds a nice foundation for you to understand others.
mm, mm,
Um, because we're all humans, right? Like so it's and um and it's really hard to understand others because you can't read other people's minds.
mhm,
And oftentimes though, like we we instead of trying to be empathetic, we might project, if that makes sense. And
mhm, mhm,
that's like different from what I'm trying to say. It's like you it's like practicing empathy on yourself through this idea of like stepping back from your own brain and then thinking about it. It's almost like, I don't know, it's like you could think about it in terms of like astral projection. You kind of just like remove like your own thoughts from like what you're observing about your body and your mind, and then kind of thinking about, okay, like what's going on and whatnot. And so I think that's kind of the way to like build that deeper connection,
mhm,
um, and like that deeper kind of emotional intelligence, I think. Uh, I try to um, I try to like, it's weird because like also I'm a really I find myself always leaning towards a super logical position,
mm,
and just like having this like formal training in like physics and math, um you you kind of develop this, at least personally I found myself developing my brain in kind of a computer fashion, if that makes sense.
mhm, yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like, oh, the way I reacted to the stimulus, I didn't really like it. I'll kind of like pull back and like debug my own brain, if that makes sense. And then
Mm, mhm,
like and then make those changes to my own algorithms, and then find myself in a happier position than originally. So like um similar, like simple things like, if someone like it it's like you can you can think about how like there's like this perspective of like feeling, you feel what you feel and you process it and you let it go through, right?
mhm,
And um I found that for myself those techniques are quite valuable, but they still require a lot of energy. And then it's been really hard for me to kind of convey this specific point,
mm,
but what if you never had to deal with those in the first place, if that makes sense?
mm,
But this is really difficult because this is like, it's different from like, oh, just don't get angry, because that doesn't really, that doesn't help anybody, right? But
right.
it falls it's an over it's a gross oversimplification of actually what I found to work for myself, is that there's like by like practicing almost like hyper empathy, I can like understand just like what like the situation, what's going on in myself, and then it doesn't garner any kind of intense emotional response, if that makes sense.
Mhm, mhm,
Something that like would cloud my judgment, for example, which is something that I never really want to happen.
Mm.
So like um I think I'm rambling a little bit, but does that make sense? Do you get what
No,
I'm talking about? Like,
yeah, I get what you're talking about. Let me see if I can restate it to you to make sure that I understand.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
to answer Emily's question in regards to advice on for a better emotional connection and awareness, you said, say that word one more time, metacognition.
Metacognition. Yeah.
So metacognition is kind of like taking a step back from your own brain and essentially being aware of yourself to recognize any sort of behavior, emotion that you have, revisiting it and consciously making an effort to try and approach similar situations differently in the future. But in order to do that, you need to be you need to be better aware of who you are. That's an oversimplification, but am I hitting some
Yeah,
of the
I think
points?
that's pretty close. Yeah, like being empathetic with yourself.
That's it, yeah.
Like, yeah, like it seems kind of weird, and I mean it is to some degree circular,
Mm-hmm,
but
mm-hmm,
it is. I think that this is just how I found it work for myself. Is that if I'm being empathetic to myself and understanding what's going on, and then it lets me better understand similar things in the future. Like this is a small tangent I'm going to go on, but like
mm-hmm,
a lot of times I found that um actually early on when I was learning how to be a human, like be social,
mm-hmm,
I I found being dense was quite helpful.
uh,
Like intentionally being dense. So when I what I mean when I say that is you you don't go like you don't make assumptions. You don't try to think too deeply about every single interaction that comes your way.
mm-hmm,
Um, and it's like it's incredibly helpful, honestly, because one, your bandwidth, your emotional bandwidth for like just going through a average day of interactions gets
mm-hmm,
completely like it just gets freed up because
mm-hmm,
you're not like thinking deeply about every single thing that happens. But over time you get to start to you can still have like it you can still have those kind of you can pick up on certain things, but you're just not acting on them. That's what I mean when I
mm-hmm,
say being dense.
mm-hmm,
um and so like one common thing that I've seen, especially in like traditional dating culture, is like um not even it's not even dating culture, actually. It's just regular interactions, and
mm-hmm,
it's actually something that's like somewhat problematic, I guess, is like when um yeah, this is more general. It's actually not dating culture, but it's like when like uh when a woman's like nice to a guy, and then a guy's
mm-hmm,
like, typically they're like, are they flirting with me or are they
mm-hmm,
being nice, right? You're just
mm-hmm,
like, and it's like uh and it's kind of annoying because I think most like straight men are going to be like, oh yeah, they're flirting with me if they're nice,
mm-hmm,
and if they're not,
mm-hmm,
they're just being a bitch. And it's just like, what? It's and like unfortunately this is a feedback mechanism where it's like, okay, like women are taught to or they're conditioned to like have to like really really put a lot of effort in like being nice but not flirty, and
mm-hmm,
it's like putting all of the it's like offsetting all of the energy and effort onto women in society. It's kind of like it's really annoying. So it's like
mm-hmm,
um um but like being dense, for example, helps to like prevent things like that, for example, because like then you don't think too deeply about it. Or if like someone says something like snide or backhanded,
mm-hmm.
you can either be like, oh, are they like talking smack, or or maybe they're just bad at words. Like you don't, but like you don't know, right? Like you really don't know. And I think this is the one thing that like most people like have trouble, not most people, but like I think some have trouble kind of like stopping the thought process at that point. You don't know, and therefore you can't go any further. And so
Mm-hmm,
why worry about it? Like you
mm-hmm,
can't, like, if that makes sense.
mm-hmm,
Like, you don't know the motivations for why people do this. or like, and you're not owed that knowledge either. For example, a lot of the times, like simple things like being refused to dance with, for
Mm-hmm.
example. You know,
Mm-hmm.
every dancer has a right to say no to a dance. And the person who's refused, it's not really, they're not really owed the reason why. And you can spend all day thinking about why that person didn't want to dance with you. And for all
Mm-hmm.
you know, they just, their stomach hurt. They just didn't want to dance, right? It could be something super benign,
Right.
or it could be that they hate your fucking guts. But the point is that it doesn't matter because you don't know.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's and I think this is like applicable to like everything. So it's a small, okay, maybe now it's a big tangent, but this is something I've always wanted to like talk a little bit about.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've been able to talk about it with you in particular.
Mm-hmm.
um but we haven't been able to have that much time hanging out since we're in both like two different fucking cities, so yeah.
Soon.
Soon.
Soon. Hashtag dance
Yeah,
house.
yeah, that's right. Well, you're first gonna go to Japan, so Japan's gonna be pretty freaking lit.
Bro, I'm gonna eat so much food for you. I'll send you
Yo.
I'll send you all
Well,
the pictures and stuff. I do want to talk about one thing that you brought up, and I keep coming back to this concept. Everything you're talking about, you recognize that being dense in social environments made it easier to not take things as strongly, essentially, is what I heard, right? Now, my thing is, you had to put in work in order to find that out about yourself. You had to realize about that about yourself. You had to have self-awareness. And I feel like self-awareness is such a cornerstone
yes,
on
yes, yes.
Hey, listeners, right now we're doing the Mark Sorosi, like
The macaron.
Marco Romano. But I feel like it's a cornerstone of like emotional intelligence and being able to operate more emotionally aware. If you know who you are and how you react to things pretty by default, well, then you can quote unquote course correct on the future. I have an example I want to use here in a second. So we were talking about like self-awareness, right? You and I went through, it wasn't even a conflict. It was just a conversation, right?
Yeah.
Because you are a doctor and an engineer and you have this beautiful brain that is solution oriented, which,
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, which Amy and I do rely on when we need like solutions because we're like, oh yeah, he'll just tell us, right? Um, I think at one point I recognized that I don't do very well with unsolicited advice or advice that is given to me because I realize that I just need someone to listen. I'm an emotional
Yeah.
bitch. I just need someone to like hold
Yeah, just
me
give
and
you your ears,
say,
yeah.
yeah, and just give me their ears. And I think that's why I bring up the self awareness because I recognize that. And it took a lot for me to reach out to you and be like, yo, when I bring up these things, I think I really just need someone to listen. And you were so receptive and so kind. And ever since then, you've always just like that time I called you in, we're not going to talk about what event, but that time I called you,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
were,
I remember that.
you just listened and you gave me perspective when I asked for it and whatnot. And I feel like that's a piece of self awareness both that I had and that you had, and that we were both able to just fucking blossom and grow. Wow, that
Yeah,
sounded
yeah.
weird. Blossom and grow. But you feel me? Would you say that that's like an example of what you're talking about? Is that type of awareness and
Yes.
growth?
Yes. So I think the key word, yeah, self-awareness hits the nail on the head. And then like self-awareness is like I would say the goal, right? Or it's like one of the aspects in which you can foster a lot of growth.
Mm-hmm.
And then something like metacognition helps to give you those pieces that you may not have in perspective yet, so that you
Mm,
could build that self-awareness, if that makes sense.
mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
metacognition is a tool towards the goal of building self-awareness. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
um,
Yeah, go ahead. Go
and
ahead.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, actually, and it was great that when you mentioned that bit, it was like a really nice reminder to actually before that, early on in my relationship with Amy, and that was my first actual relationship,
Mm.
um, I had to learn actually that, like, I got that feedback. I was sometimes people just want to listen or just want to talk, and
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
and the I was already at some point, like even before leaving Gainesville, I was told like, yeah, you just listen. It's great. People like that, right? But I didn't realize that it was the talking after that was something that I could grow on, right? And
Mm. Mm.
learning to just shut up and just listen, right? Because
Mm.
most people just want someone to just listen to them, and that
Mhm.
takes a lot because like you said, I'm solution oriented. I'm I mean, I'm a physicist, which is all about intuition, but I am an engineer at heart because it's all about finding solutions, or
Mhm.
fixing issues. And so, um, and like sometimes the solution is that it's like you just let it, you just let people talk.
Mhm.
People just want to
Mhm.
be heard. It's really simple.
Mhm.
It's less, and it's easy for me because it's like, oh, it's less work, less work for me. I don't have to
Mhm.
say anything. I could just listen, give a little bit of perspective when it's like when it's warranted, like when it's asked for, or when the
Mhm.
space is open for that. And yeah, like being dense, for example, helps with that, right? Because then you don't, or like I don't want to say being dense, like it's not even like acting dense either. It's like it's weird. So like making the choice to not act on assumed knowledge, if that makes
Mhm.
sense, or like interpretation. Like, do you know the whole like askers and guessers thing?
Mhm.
There's like this dynamic or duality, I guess, of like you're. I mean, I don't think it's entirely true, but maybe it's more of a spectrum. But it's like you're either an asker or you're a guesser, and so like
Mhm.
askers are those who find no harm in being explicit and
Mhm.
understand, like, just like being explicit and like literally just asking, right? And
Mhm.
guessers are those um who operate through like this implication. One specific thing is like an ask, like, so say you need a place to crash at, right? An asker is just going to ask,
Mhm.
can I stay over at your place? I need a place to stay. Can I stay over? A guesser is going to figure out first if that person is going to say yes. And if it's yes, then they're going to ask.
Ah.
Otherwise, then, so this is like from the perspective of someone making the request. Now
Mhm.
you go to the other side as someone receiving the request.
Mhm.
Then an asker receiving the request is going to be and this is I'm quoting this from like this thing I read, so it's not how I
Mhm.
think about it. But like an asker who receives a question, like an ask, they don't think deeply about why, right? Or like like if they ask, and I say no, and that's okay, right? So askers to an asker is a clear communication line,
Mhm. Yeah,
and
sure,
a
yeah.
person and a guesser so a guesser who gets a question like that or a request from a guesser, um, they would be like, "Oh yeah, they know I'm good. They know that I want them. Like they know that I'm more than happy to host them, and so that's totally fine, right?" But when an asker and a guesser interact, this is where there's a bit of friction. So like a guesser who's asked by an asker may go down this thought pathway of like how I'm definitely not going to like, or like they asked because they think I would say yes,
Mhm.
right? And it's like there's this friction of like implied, like imposing. I don't know if that makes sense,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and then the opposite is like a guesser will like seldom make their intentions or their feelings or their wants known because like they have to first suss out if the other person is going to be receptive to that like thing, right? And so like I don't know if it's entirely true, but like I've seen pretty good examples of this where like someone who leans towards like this guessing side, they're like they struggle because they like are trying to they're trying to communicate, but they're not, they're like filtering their own communication lines because there's this whole thought process that's kind of impeding that, if that makes sense.
Oh, no, I fully understand what you're talking about. And we're not going to put names out there, but we have mutual friends that I feel like, and I'm putting myself in that group, are totally guessers in the sense where, like, I could care a lot less of what I want. I want more of what they want. And like these friends in particular, we threw this little video together. It's like this person saying, "Hey, do you want coffee?" And they're like, "Do you want coffee?" And they'll be like, "Oh no, I want to know if you want coffee." But they'll be like, "I want coffee if you want coffee," you know? And like
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
that
exactly.
guessing, yeah, when I see guessing, I see that as tangential to people pleasing, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think there is a it was a really good point. I think there is this like correlation that happens between like
Yeah.
that perspective and like that kind of yeah.
And like with what you're saying about the askers, right? To me, I've had to really work on trusting what people tell me, trusting what someone says. And I had a very dear friend tell me, like I was in my head, and this is a very dear friend. I was like, I was guessing, and I was making choices for them. And then they said to me, they were like, "Hey, um, I think I'd like you to take what I say to heart, like trust that I say what I mean, you know?" And
Yep.
for me, that was so hard because I was like, but like, what if that's not what you want? What if da, 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 da? But then I realized that I really do have to believe that it's they say what they mean. An example is if I'm interested in someone, right? And they tell me, "Oh, I see you as just a friend or I'm not interested." But then they like act a little flirty. I real like with me after they find out that I'm interested. Well, then to me, I realize, okay, well, I'm just gonna believe what you say. Like you can do all these things, but if you tell me this one thing, I don't play the guessing game. I'm just gonna trust what you say, and unless you say something different, well, then it's going to be different. It's going to be difficult for me to like change my behavior. That's I have to say that that idea and that concept isn't fully sussed out yet for me because I haven't fully gotten there yet, but I feel like that does play a part into like the askers and the guessers that you were talking about. Um,
Yeah, like so this goes back to, and I think this maybe I'm just really lucky as far as what path I took as far as like developing my own social interactions.
mhm,
But like making that choice of like like being dense actually had this aspect of like you just take people's words at face value
mhm, mhm, mhm,
because then you don't think deeply about it. What they say is a truth or is a desire and it's exactly what they want because they, the synapses fired in their brain, converted into the muscles in their mouth and they said something and I'm just gonna take that as truth. It doesn't matter what what the implications are, where it came from, or whatnot. And then that makes it very easy because then like suppose someone because then it gives a very clear feedback loop of like if someone was trying to make an implication of something or
mhm,
if they're trying to beat around the bush and
mhm.
then it just flies right through me and then like they're angry about it, it's like that's your fucking problem. Like you like like if you like with me you got to be explicit. That's just how it
Yeah,
is. Like I mean like maybe once you have a much deeper relationship then you can start picking up on those things and then being a little bit less um explicit, but like right off the bat like I can't read your mind.
I agree.
I can't even read my own mind, but just sometimes this shit, the things going on in my brain is just like memes and Instagram reels.
Bro,
So
you are cracked when it comes to reels, my guy, or like memes. The we can't talk about that though. That's Patreon shit. That's Patreon shit. But I do want to. I think that you brought up a big point of like reading minds, because to Emily's question, right? Like, how do you need to work soon? Do you need to go to work soon?
no, no, we're chilling, we're chilling.
All right. I feel like when Emily asked about like how do you build emotional connection and awareness? I think a big part of emotional connection and awareness is communication.
Yes,
And
absolutely. Yes.
a a be like you said, having empathy for yourself and communicating with yourself with the end goal to love yourself, which is obviously a lot harder said than done.
Oh
But
yeah, absolutely.
then there's the concept of communicating and relating with different humans, because I do believe that, especially with swing dancing, there is an art and a tactfulness and a social grace to be able to communicate with people on or off the dance floor. Like,
Yes.
you can
One
tell
billion
when,
percent. Yeah.
yeah, you can tell when you connect with someone and you start dancing with them and you realize, oh, they have a lot to say and I'm just here. Whereas you can connect with someone who's cozy and you realize, oh, I'm given space, I'm given a voice, I'm speaking like as a follow or a lead, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm giving choices and whatnot. And that's like the communication. I feel like in the real world, in the dance world, our friends tend to be, we got very lucky. I tell you this all the time, how fucking lucky we are that we have the friends that we do, that they're so emotionally intelligent and that they put work in
Yeah.
themselves. So
Hmm.
here's a question I have for you. Since we talk about communication and emotional awareness and whatnot, I'm looking for a more like concrete thing here. What are like some books, podcasts, or resources that you've used to get to where you are in your emotional intelligence and communication journey?
That's a really good question because I don't actually read too much. Like the most
Climax.
sorry, yeah, that was a bait. But like
Yeah.
yeah, like I've never I don't really read like the last book I read was something on quantum field theory. Like I just read
Damn.
textbooks, bro. Like
Uh,
I that's just what I do. That's the only thing I read. And One Piece. Now I'm reading One Piece.
hell
That's
yeah.
fun. Um but as far as resources go, one thing I will say I think is talk to the people who's just I think the people around you who you desire to be more like,
Mm,
right? Just if there's someone who has a particular, you know, like way of life or approach or whatever, like you ask them about it, you learn about you first you learn about them and then you think and then you can think about integrating that into your own life. That makes sense. You know,
mm-hmm.
that's what I could I mean if you're trying to learn about being a human and other humans and how to interact with humans, then aren't humans one of the best things? Like yeah, I don't know. I Yeah, like I can't make any reading material recommendations. Honestly, I feel like your podcast, as far as like all the different people you've talked to, I think is a great resource already.
Bruh, bruh,
So, um,
bruh.
let's see. Yeah. Oh, you know what? Actually, there is one person. But that's only because I've met them adjacent to, or not met them, but I've watched their stuff adjacent to like this my other hobbies, which is mostly gaming. But
Mm-hmm.
there is a uh, a Southwest Asian therapist on YouTube and Twitch who his account's called Healthy Gamer GG,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's all psychology and like therapy talks and lectures, but in the context of gaming. And I'll tell you this: a lot of gamers are pretty fucking immature. They have a lot of like what's the word, emotional intelligence work that is remains to be done. It's a
Mm-hmm.
sweeping generalization, but I think it's a fair one.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
so this guy takes like a lot of these things that are problematic in like the gaming culture or like the streaming and gaming culture, for example, and then
Mm-hmm.
kind of breaks them down as far as like where they could come from and whatnot. And then like what I really like though is that he pulls from a lot of um Eastern slash South, so Eastern meaning like uh uh East Asian, but also South Asian like practices. So
Mm-hmm.
like the oh, I can't remember this proper name, but like those like like Indian gurus, for example. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a proper name I can't remember, but there's like this whole thing about meditation and nirvana and whatnot, right? But like there's a lot of value in terms of their perspective on like what the mind is, and
Mm-hmm.
it's completely different from like formalized like like Western psychology. And he mixes the two together. It's really really cool to see that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like for example, like he does a small thing about like ADHD and how it's like how it's a disorder in the West, right? But in the East, it's actually this like aspect of your mind that it's that it flows. It flows like a river. And it
Mm-hmm.
like and it's really interesting because it's like this different perspective that like your mind has this element to it, and that element is that it like, or was it? I think it was wind actually. And so it's not, so it's like your mind has this airiness to it, and that's just a physical, it's like a feature of who you are as opposed to a disorder. And it's, I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was just really cool. And he talks about a lot of really interesting different topics. And so yeah, Healthy Gamer GG was something that I really enjoyed, but that's because it's in context of gaming.
Mm-hmm.
And I also like the way he talks, and I like that he's also person of color from Southwest Asia. Like it's just like you get to see a lot of really interesting mixture of cultures there. Um, and yeah, so that's a resource. That was a little long-winded, but I really like, I mean, once in a while I see this stuff and I'm like, wow, this is really great. I don't know whether or not it's entirely applicable, but it makes a lot of sense. It checks off a lot of boxes as far as like my sanity checks, as far as like, is this bullshit or is this not? Like
Mm-hmm.
um
Mm-hmm.
so that there's um so there's that. Yeah, so like people around you, I really like Healthy Gamer GG. um I think like, yeah, just like maybe like that aspect of like self-love you were talking about, like that was a very long and arduous journey for myself too. Like I was hyper self-critical in like leading up to early college, and like some point I was like, this is not sustainable. I can't just be like shitting on myself constantly and having zero confidence, and like it's just not going to work, right? And so I like rewired my brain and stuff like that. And but self-love takes a while. It takes a long
Mm-hmm.
fucking time. And
Whew.
honestly, that's like something that really, really does help with like everything else. Because like when your mind becomes your own best friend, I don't know if that makes sense, but like
Mm-hmm.
then like then it just becomes so much easier to just grow.
Mm.
Yeah.
Dude, carry on. I didn't want to cut you in because you brought
No,
up so
that's
many
it. Like
words.
it's just that, right? Like you can't have, like, it's you against, I don't even like that expression of like you against the world, but like,
Mm.
it's like you versus the stimulus, and the stimulus
Mm-hmm.
is everything else. And how are you, I mean, like, why put yourself at a disadvantage by having this internal battle?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make any sense, right? Like, and
Mm-hmm.
it's weird to be like applying logic to yourself. But this is where it gets a little trippy, because it's like, because if you think about a conflict between two individuals and you're trying to
Uh-huh.
resolve that, that means
Uh-huh.
you have to like reason with the individuality of each person involved in the
Mm-hmm.
conflict, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if there's a conflict within yourself, then person you're like the only entity that you're trying to reason with is yourself,
Mm-hmm.
which is the thing trying to which is the thing trying to resolve the thing that, like, it's very self-referential, and I don't know if it makes any fucking sense, but like, it's like conflict resolution internally should be relatively, not should be, but like it feels easier because it's your own freaking mind. That makes sense. I don't know. I don't know. That's weird because like maybe there's like this degree of like, because like I don't know, for
I
those who really struggle with that internal conflict, whatever
mm-hmm,
it is, whether it be like insecurities or like things like trauma is really freaking difficult. So that's something I'm not gonna make any statements about, because that's like its own complete different like thing. Um, but like things uh like better understanding yourself and using that to develop a platform of like self-love. Yeah, just like you were saying,
mm,
just like self-love is a great way to, it's a great starting point, I think, because
mm-hmm,
then that really allows you to team up with your own, you know how like people say my brain or my mind, like my brain thinks this, and it's really weird actually if you take that statement and break it down, because how is your brain a separate entity from your own consciousness?
mm, mm-hmm.
Right? Your
Yeah,
mind, your brain, your mind, and to some degree it's not, I feel like it's not conducive to self-love, because you're like otherizing a part of your own consciousness,
true.
right? You're like, yeah, you're like, I think it's like, yeah, you're like objectifying this part of how your mind works, and then making it this thing that you can like use as a scapegoat, or like you can antagonize. I don't know. That
Mm-hmm,
doesn't seem very conducive. But if this is how people kind of think about their own bodies, then you may as well love it instead of hate it.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I that was a lot. My bad.
No, no, no.
But
This
yeah,
is that's really good though. I do want to point out I'd never heard of Healthy Gamer GG before, but I went to their website and they have 20-minute they have like
yeah,
50-minute sessions for $50. That's
yeah,
cheaper than therapy.
yeah, yeah.
So
And
I'm not gonna
you
lie.
don't
Yeah.
necessarily need the, I mean, all the content that he posts on YouTube and like the VODs you see on Twitch are pretty damn good
Mm,
too.
yeah.
It's pretty interesting. Also, I think he has a Discord as well, which has a lot of great resources. Excuse me. So it's, yeah. Yeah, but uh his stuff is great. I mean his stuff blew up in the past year and a half, I think, maybe 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And like I remember coming across his stuff when it was like pretty early. Like he only had like, less than, he had like what, a couple of thousand subscribers or something.
Mm,
And now his stuff blew up. But I think it's because like people did really, I think he identified that like there's a severe lack of like, there's this void of like mental health awareness and self-awareness in the gaming culture and gaming community.
mm,
Um, and especially when it comes to like competitive gaming, because like for those of you who are League of Legends players, for example, I feel like understand how much of a cesspool that like the ranked community is in that game. And as someone
mm-hmm,
who plays a lot of Valorant, it's the same shit. It's the same shit, but like it's, I mean they're different games, but like it's similar. And for those of you who've played honestly any kind of ranked, like any kind of competitive game that has ranks in it, it's
mm-hmm,
like so fucking toxic. And it's because like, people don't understand, like it's like people just like don't understand that. It's kind of like road rage, I guess, in a sense, where it's like you get behind the wheel of a car and you're like a completely different person, but like why? Like why is that the case? You get it right? Like, you're one of those people, aren't you? But it brings up I think it's a good point. Like, why? Like, why does getting behind the wheel of a car somehow turn you into like the scum of the earth? Like, and
Bro.
even then, that context is like a little different. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is. It is different. Now, like to kind of bring it full circle, I'm curious. This is something I want to do a podcast on in the future, but I'm curious about how that relates to like how people interact and how people engage in the swing dance world, specifically with competitions. Because I brought that up with several people in the past, and they all had their own take or their own way of interacting with it. Um, but I think everyone kind of views it differently. A lot of the people that I've talked to said they just compete for fun. And some people have opened up about how difficult competing can be or level placements because it's nerve wracking. Like you are being put in a bucket or in a box based off your perceived value by someone else.
Yeah.
And that can mess with you.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a really that's a big question because I don't know. I mean, I compete, but I have only recently started trying to understand competitions, if that makes sense. I've
Mm-hmm.
competed forever, you know, like, but, and when I mean forever, I mean like since I started dancing, but like, I don't think I tried to understand what's going on in it. And for the most part, I would just be somebody that does, like, I do say it's for fun and I try to say it's for fun, but even sometimes I'm like, oh, like why am I getting nervous?
Mm-hmm.
Why do I feel bad? You know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And but I have one perspective or one kind of insight I think that I've had recently is trying to deconstruct um the not deconstruct, but like just trying to understand the mental process of like why like what motivates competing, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because like everybody's going to have a different question. But sometimes and this is something that I worry about and I well not that I worry about, but this is something that I would like to work against, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um is a competitive atmosphere that is results oriented. So
Mm-hmm.
that seems counterintuitive or not counter that seems contradictory to what competing is about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what I mean to say is you got to ask yourself as a competitor, are you competing because you want to win? Or are you competing because you love this like dance? Like, or if you love like the thing that you're competing in.
Mm-hmm.
Because then like when you really strip away the layers and think about it, right? Then I think it gives a lot of insight as far as how you feel going into it and going out of it, whether or not you make it to finals or you get a point or you get a callback or whatever, or um, or like you don't get anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like this, I think it's really important for people to ask themselves and understand um because like for example, my perspective on finals now is like this is an opportunity to perform.
Mm-hmm.
It's like to give a
Mm-hmm.
good show. And this is why, for example, personally, I don't feel ready for finals or it feels fine. Like if it's like it feels it's not what's the word? Like I seldom get into finals and it feels like it makes sense because I don't
Mm-hmm.
feel ready to perform, if that makes sense. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like I want to put on a good show with my partner and like
Mm-hmm.
do I have what it takes to like perform to like to kind of show to actually like embody my love for this dance in a way that like everybody's gonna like or I guess like that I would be like proud of. I don't know. Like it's interesting just because like this is kind of digging into my kind of perspective. Like I use competing first and foremost actually as a growth, like a tool for growth. It's a
Mm-hmm.
mechanism for growth. It's a way for me
Mm-hmm.
to figure out a way to work with somebody to kind of identify and work towards a goal. And it's like identify certain aspects in which I can reach this goal and then work towards that goal. And like at the end of the day, foster in a lot of growth in my dancing. And because at the end, because I wanted at the end of the day to be cozy, right? And in order to be
Yeah.
cozy, you have to be more comfortable. Your connection needs to be cozy. Your dancing needs to be cozy. Your rhythm, your musicality, your your stylings, your everything
Mm.
needs to get to a certain level. And for me right now, it's mostly fundamentals. I really want my fundamentals to be super, super solid because then from there, if I have a cozy fundamental set, then I can actually build a lot of cozy things on top of that, right? So like competitions are great for kind of building that. And so that's why I'm doing it. Um, but if like you want to, if you do it because you want to win, like it's okay to want to win,
Mm-hmm.
but like yeah, it's perfectly valid if you want to win, but
Mm-hmm.
it's you got to make sure that your motivation is still about it like still has roots in your love for the dance. Otherwise, then you can compete in something else that's easier to compete in, but it's easy, like but you can win, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know. Um and it's kind of I don't know, it's kind of sometimes it just uh sucks because like if you're so results oriented, then you're going to if you're so results oriented, I think it pulls away from the spirit of the dance. If that makes sense,
Mm. Mm.
right?
Mm.
Like, and it's like goes back to like what Amy said. It's like it's all made up.
Mm.
It's all, it's about intersectionality and meeting other people and having a great time. And the competitions are a fun way to have a performance effectively.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. Yeah.
it's a great way for people to come and enjoy an event and be like, look at these awesome dancers, look at them swinging the fuck out, throwing each other around, doing all this crazy awesome stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but like the medals and the trophies and the ribbons and whatever, that's kind of just like it's just an afterthought. It's like in fact it's just like a I don't know, it's just like a it's an artifact of probably like society. It's it's not really a deep part of at least personally I don't think it's a deep like it's not a deep part in the roots of dancing. Does that make
I hear
sense?
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. I want to touch on 2 points that you made there. So there were two things that you brought up, and you were talking about like, first of all, I do want to point out there may be some people listening right now that may think, oh, I really care about winning when I compete. Like we said, that's completely valid. And we're operating off of our perspectives because Mishu and I and Amy, I think we all kind of operate with that same value of competition is an opportunity for us to give the energy back to the people, right?
Yeah.
I was recently, so today is October 4th. I was recently at an event called Great Lakes Balboa Escape. And I have to say, if no one has ever heard of it before, it's in Chicago. It's fun. It's organized by Desiree. She is
Yeah, I really
amazing.
wanted to go. I
Yeah.
couldn't.
So it was really great. And there was this one thing that really stuck out to me. And what I did was I sent it to my current three dance partners. I sent it to Steph, Amy, and Jungle in a little group chat. And Chisomo had said, how often do you think about why you compete? And I feel like this like falls directly into what we're talking about because she said most people only think about why they compete if they don't do well. And she challenged people to kind of suggest why you only think of why you compete when a certain event happens, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then she instead suggests, why don't you think about why you compete in the days leading up to the event, not just at the event, in the months coming up, and you really like get into thinking about that process. And this is new to me, and it's something that is visceral, because I think that that falls directly in line with what we're saying. Because if you're going to approach competition, and if you want to approach it with the healthiest mindset possible, well, then doing so, I feel like thinking about why you compete and thinking about that often, and not just when you don't do well,
Yeah, yeah,
is a step in
exactly.
that direction.
Yes, yeah. And that's precisely the results oriented kind of mindset that I personally want to like combat, you know. So I was thinking about, so it's like a small thing that I was thinking of, I was interested in doing is maybe putting together like a small like competition uh group, I guess, which make if that
Hmm.
makes sense, like a competition group, but it's more about providing a space that people can work on things that are more relevant to competing in dance,
Hmm.
uh, but also fostering a culture that is combative against this results oriented mindset. Because personally, I feel that I like that's me kind of imposing my competition values specifically
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
into the dancers around me, if that makes sense. Um, if I wanted to do this kind of little small project thing,
Hmm.
but yeah, and that question I think is a fantastic. Who was it that asked you that? Because I think I missed that detail.
Chisomo. Chisomo.
Chisomo. Okay,
Well,
awesome.
she didn't tell me that directly, but it was spoken in class, and I was talking
Oh,
about it with my
that's
best friend.
awesome. I'm I'm a fan. Yeah,
Yeah.
that that question I think is extremely valid because and extremely important, honestly, because that and this goes back to like the metacognition thing, kind of like you want to
Hmm.
understand yourself, and I think that compete like if you those bad vibes you get from competing, it's important that you dig deep and kind of find where they come from. Because I also the other thing is that like it very likely could come from something else completely unrelated to dancing.
Hmm. Hmm.
It could be a
Yeah.
perspective on life or traumatic experience that you've had when you were younger. Like
Hmm.
um it's like it because it's yeah, well, it depends. It will vary from person to person, but like there's just so many things that could come from, and I don't think it's intrinsically part of the the dance.
Hmm.
Like, did they have? Do you know? Well, maybe we should ask one of our dance historian friends. But like, did they have competitions back in like the 40s, 50s? I
Hmm.
wonder
It
what it
was
was
very
like during that
competition
time.
centric. Yeah,
Hmm,
I'm
interesting.
actually I'm so glad you brought that up because I'm working on getting a dance historian, um, a person of color dance historian, to do a podcast with me to talk purely about the history of dance because I recognize now that there are people who listen to the podcast who don't know the history of Lindy Hop. And yeah, there are really great resources online and stuff, but I also have questions that I would like answered. And I am curious about what the competition is like back in the day. And like if they were super competition oriented and what that mindset was. Frankie's book touches on that a little bit. I'll have to reread it to like delve in it more.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Maybe if I yeah, maybe I'll pick up a little bit of reading on that then, because that'd be really interesting. Um,
Yeah.
because like there's also another aspect that we're in such a social media, like it's just such a much more connected, like globally connected landscape now that competitions are like I would argue that competitions are wildly different, even
Mm-hmm.
just going from like, the mid 20th century to now, right? Like because of the social media and the YouTube videos and the live
Mm-hmm.
streams and uh, all of that, it's like a kind of a different game. Um,
Yeah.
and so then there's a lot of other things that could like influence your competitive mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, how's the competitive mindset? I don't really know too much about this. I mean, I'm relatively new to like thinking about it, you know?
Yeah.
Um, like, but it's fun though. I think it's really fun still. But maybe it's
Yeah.
because maybe I'm just fortunate enough to like be surrounded by people and dance with people who are like really do love it, you know? They just love
Hmm.
the dance. And then competing is a method of holding themselves accountable as far as their growth. That's also another thing. Like it's a nice way for me to personally, it's a nice way for me to yeah, hold myself accountable. You have a goal at the end, you want to work towards that goal, and this fosters accelerated growth because otherwise then, you know, you might be just aimlessly kind of working like on a couple different things, but when you have something that kind of rigorizes what stuff you want to work on, then it's just a little bit more structured. Yeah.
Gotcha. No, I feel you. And like, yeah, I feel like there's so many other directions we can go with that. We're almost reaching the 2 hour mark, my guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, you can edit it, cut out a bunch of stuff.
Nah, dude, this is all like really good shit. All right, but before we go into wrapping things up, we talked about a lot of different things. And I'm curious, is there anything that we talked about that you want to touch back on that we haven't already, or anything new that you want to bring up?
um, Honestly, I feel like we hit a lot of stuff, a lot of really interesting things. Um, I think the metacognition was something I really valued,
Mm,
like to talk about. So I'm glad that you brought up that question. And uh, it was Emily, right?
mm-hmm,
I remember Emily. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm thankful for that question. Thank you, Emily, for that. That was
mm-hmm.
awesome. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything additional that I wanted to speak about, honestly. Um, but yeah, I don't I don't know if there's anything in particular yet.
No. That's I feel you. That's
We hit a lot of things, so
we did, dude. I'm gonna have a hard time coming up with a title for this podcast, but I will say at the end, if you're watching this on YouTube and you got to the very end, comment down below metacognition. So
yeah,
metacognition is what you'll comment down below. Dude, people are
yeah,
gonna go
yeah.
to that video on YouTube and be like, what the heck are they talking about? Like, why is there metacognition everywhere written down below? So metacognition down below. All right. Sounds good. Now we're gonna go through the three same questions I ask all of my guests in my podcast. All right.
Okay, okay.
So the first question is, where are you traveling to for the rest of the year?
So for the rest of this year, I'm flirting with Hot Jazz Jamboree. I
Mm,
haven't made any commitments to it yet. Um, and I think maybe stormy weather. Maybe.
mm.
Could be stormy weather, which is in Seattle. Hot Jazz Jamboree is in Denver. Um, is there
Phoenix Lindy
something?
Exchange.
Oh, Phoenix Lindy Exchange. Yes, that's right here. And then um, and then I will say for so instead of end of the year, can I do like for the next year? How
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that?
go for it. Yeah,
So
yeah.
until next, yeah. So cowbell, I think for sure. Um, and then the two events in Texas. So there's I don't know, what is it called? There is what's the one in Austin? It's escaping me right now.
Lindy Fest.
There's Lindy Fest, but that's in Houston, and that's in March. There's one in February. Uh,
Oh, Hot Rhythm Holiday.
Hot Rhythm Holiday. I think, yeah, Hot Rhythm Holiday for sure. Maybe Lindy Fest, but I'm gonna see if I can do the Bow Experiment. And so Bow Experiment, I think, takes around happens around the same time. So it's either Lindy Fest or Bow Experiment. Camp Hollywood for sure. But and then in the summer, I don't know. I think that might be it. Yeah. So not too many events. I mean, if there's I mean, if friends want to go with me somewhere, just hit me up and see, and then maybe I'll make plans. I definitely have the funds to do it. It's more about just bandwidth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. I feel you.
yeah.
All right. And speaking of friends, where can people find more information about you if they were curious? Like, do you have a doctor's
Um,
website or
I
an
mean, if for
OnlyFans or
I, I don't have any kind of like maybe Linktree or whatever, but I mean, like technically, if you want some professional stuff, you can always find me on LinkedIn. If it's more just like gaming or hanging out, you can always just send me a message on, I think Messenger is probably the best, Facebook Messenger.
Mhm.
That's probably the best. But I mean, if it's not dancing, I'm gaming. So, for those of you who want to hang out and play games, just send me a message. I'll add you on Discord.
Oh yeah.
We can always hang out. That's always fun.
Cool.
Uh, yeah. If there's any one of you out there that plays Valorant, just hit me up because I'm always down to play that.
Nice. Nice. All right. And we already dropped a bunch of really great truth knowledges and all that, but last question I want to ask is, what's a message you want to leave for any swing dancers that are listening?
Ooh, that's a tough one. uh, I think just I think empathy is unbounded,
Mm, mm,
and I th- and empathy really does apply to everything, especially your dance, if that makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense now, I hope it makes sense later. But it is be overly empathetic to yourself and give
mm.
yourself a break. And that allows you to be empathetic with others. And I think that allows you to connect better. So that's one thing. Maybe another is it, I I don't know, maybe that's you're the main character of your story. That's something that I
Mm,
want people to remember. It's that you're the main
mm.
character of your story. And so what is that story that you want to build? That's and I think empathy with yourself is a way to build a great story. Yeah.
I think that is a beautiful title to this podcast. Empathy by a doctor.
I
Yeah, I
dig it. I
think
like it.
I think that would be it. But Mishu, brother, my dear brother,
Appreciate you, Audrey. Thanks for having me on this.
of course, man, thank you for all your wealth of knowledge. We appreciate the doctor's perspective.
Well, I didn't talk that much about physics, but hey. Oh, if you ever see me at an event, as for the listeners, I'm always down to talk physics. That's just like always down to talk physics and math and science, and I try to dabble in a bunch of different things. So, uh, yeah,
Yeah, and I'll tell you guys right now, like when we talk cybersecurity, Mishu knows his shit. So,
only a little bit. I only know a little, but Andre's
all
always
right,
teaching me some new stuff. It's cool. Yeah.
legal things, legal
True,
things.
true, true.
All right, everybody. But if you made it to the end, don't forget to write metacognition down in the comments. If you haven't already, follow us on Instagram, YouTube, as well as rate us 5 stars on Spotify. And we're trying to bump up the YouTube numbers. So even if you're listening to this on Spotify, do me a favor and subscribe to us on YouTube because I'd like for this to make money because this doesn't make money right now. But thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And Mishu, appreciate you, brother.
Love you, buddy. Thanks for
Love
having
you
me.
too, man. Don't go anywhere after I stop recording. All right.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. The music you are currently hearing is called Dances in the Night by Papa D. You can find all his links down below. Till next time.
Don't lose hope, trying to stand tall, trying to give this dance of yours the best that you got. Cause every time that they hear this sound, that music gets their feet above the ground. Time just seemed to stop in every move. Seems all your life what is based on tonight. got to be a dancer.